Hello and welcome back to Eyes on the Road.
We were in Williamsburg, Virginia for a week.
Let's see what we did there. We arrived in Williamsburg after a 3-hour drive. The spots were tight, but they had a nice indoor pool that we got to swim in.
These are leaf springs. They act like the suspension on a trailer. As you can see, the one on the right appears a little worn and rusty. Though our trailer's only 2 years old, we have put quite the miles and wear on it. David did his homework so he could order and buy all of the leaf springs ahead of time. When we arrived at the campground, David had set up for another resident to put on new leaf springs, and it worked out perfect. After the tires came off, we went from old to new.
The first town we visited in America's historic triangle was historic Yorktown. We went to Yorktown Battlefield and got a tour with a ranger. The Battle of Yorktown was the last major battle of the Revolutionary War. We went into town to see some historic buildings before heading on a driving tour. We drove around the area to see different historical sites in the battle, such as redoubts 9 and 10, which the French and Americans attacked to complete their line of offense. Washington and Rochambeau's armies built big trenches around Yorktown in a siege. After being battered for 3 weeks, Cornwallis's British army surrendered, objectively ending the War for Independence. Yorktown was also the site of a Civil War battle, and lots of the original earthworks are from that era. The next town in the historical triangle we visited was historic Jamestown. Jamestown was the first successful English colony in America. We went on a ranger tour of James Fort. The fort is reconstructed and parts of the original are in the river. We went to the Archaeological Museum and saw artifacts that were dug up in the area, including human remains. We even walked past a real archaeological dig that was happening. This statue is in honor of Pocahontas, who helped the first colonists survive.
On the way into Jamestown, my mom spotted a glasshouse sign, so on the way out, we checked it out. First, we looked at the glasshouse ruins with the 17th century furnace's foundations. At that time, the business did not survive. Then we looked at the working glasshouse. We were there for an hour and a half. They send their items to dozens of different national parks. The process of glassblowing is fascinating. First, glass mixture is made of more than 3/4 of sand and 1/4 of limestone and soda ash. The Jamestown glasshouse gets their mix pre-made, then the rest of the process they do themselves in 16th century style. At first, a lady and a guy made beer mugs, but then the guy went on lunch break, so the lady made vases. My mom actually bought that exact type of vase before she started making it. They heat up the mixture to more than 2000 Fahrenheit to make it almost a liquid in a furnace. The next step is to stick the liquid onto a hot hollow rod. Then, to make this specific vase, she put it in a mold. He then rolled it out to make a basic size. Next, she blew through the hollow rods to make an air pocket in the glass so it would not just be a blob of glass. That is where glassblowing gets its name. They were using blue as the color that day. Next, she heated up a different rod and sticked it onto the glass to get a different angle. Then she put the whole vase back in the furnace to get it warm enough to work with again. Next, she shaped the top of the vase. Then she disconnected the rod completely. She used a torch to make the bottom not sharp and put it in the oven to gradually cool it overnight. It was a great experience and I definitely recommend it. On Friday, we went to the Virginia Capitol. We went on the free tour and the guide told us some interesting facts, like the cage next to the staircase is the old elevator cage. We went to the old Senate chamber and to the Jefferson room. In one of the rooms, we saw the model originally used for building the Capitol. Each time the Capitol was painted, the model was painted the same color, so there were many different layers of paint. This bust is of Zachary Taylor, our 12th president, who was from Virginia. Fun fact, we are actually distantly related to him through my mom's side. On the way out, we visited the governor's mansion. Like all the other capitals, this one was under construction.
Richmond National Battlefield Park has multiple sites, but we chose to go to the Maggie L Walker National Historic Site because it was close. I didn't know about Maggie L Walker before visiting her house, but she was a very interesting lady to learn about. Maggie L Walker's best-known achievement was being the first Black woman to own and operate a bank, but she did a lot more than just that. She lived through the Reconstruction era and provided jobs for many Black women throughout her life. After watching a video about her, we got a tour of her house. She was very well off from her businesses bought her own house, and installed heating and electricity, which were novelties at the time. It was a multi-generational house with as many as 17 people living there at one time. In the latter years of her life, Walker lost the ability to walk and was wheelchair-bound, so she installed an elevator system that used a pulley, which is pretty amazing. The girls got their Junior Ranger badges, and all the Rangers there were really nice. The campground hosted candy bar bingo. Each player brought their own candy bar, and each winner got 3. Gemma was the only one of us who won, but a nice family gave each of us girls who didn't win a candy bar because they won a lot.
On Saturday, we went to Williamsburg. You could go in for free, but you can't do a lot of the big building tours without paying quite a bit of money like we did. Williamsburg is part of the Historic Triangle, but it's not part of the National Park Service. First, we went to the old Capitol building. We took a half-hour tour. It was the capital of Virginia when the 13 colonies were part of England. Next, we went to the coffee house. It was for mostly wealthy people. The drinks were pressed or melted in little pots. They had coffee, a few types of tea, and bitter hot cocoa or drinking chocolate. We got to try either the hot cocoa or coffee. Us girls didn't really like the cocoa, but my mom liked the cocoa and coffee mixed together. After that, we got in line to eat lunch at the King's Arms, and while we waited, we watched some drummers and fifers. When we sat down, we noticed it was a Chowing's Tavern menu. It turns out the Chowing's Tavern was part of the King's Arms while their restaurant was under construction. Their food was great, though. We shared a few different types of colonial meals like onion pie, pot roast, and Welsh rarebit. It was all really good. While we were eating, a man came in with a guitar and a flute and played some old tunes. Then we got a peanut butter pie and snow eggs for dessert. Next, we went to the wig shop and the guard post. Then we went to the courthouse. There was a reenactment with the crowd being the people reenacting. Jem and I were a few justices and my dad was the sheriff.
Dudley Richardson, Esquire, come forth to the bar of the King's Justice, and thou shalt be heard.
Then we went to the bookbinder. There were carriages all throughout the streets. Our last stop was the governor's mansion. It's where the old governor lived in. There were 400 guns and more than 1,000 swords throughout the building. The governor, his wife, and their daughters would have lived there while the sons went to boarding school. We did a maze of the mansion grounds before we left.
This week was a really busy week. We stayed at 1,000 Trails in Williamsburg, which was central to everything we wanted to see in the area. Most of the sites this week were National Park Service sites, so they were covered by our annual pass. That means we saved our big spending for Colonial Williamsburg. We had a fantastic meal there, and all of the colonial activities were worth it.
It was a very historic area.
See you next week on Rise on the Road.
Bye!